Hello and welcome to Asterix and the Falling Sky. I am Noodle, that is Scummer, and you are more than welcome if you have joined us today. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Hops, and I can also see Ring in the chat. You're both very welcome. Thank you for joining us. Anyone else who's lurking, thank you as well. And anyone who's going to listen into the future, hello, hope you're well. We are doing Asterix and the Falling Sky this week, so I'm going to hand over to Scummer and I'm going to ask you what you think.
Okay, well, this is a rarity because this is the first time Noodle had read a book before I had. I think this is the first. So I only read this a couple of hours ago. This is a strain. This is one of the more out there ones, without a doubt. That some critics definitely panned this as a bit of a jump to shark moment for Asterix, and I can kind of see where they're coming from. But there's definitely commentary on things going on at the time. Some of it good, some of it a little bit more questionable. You know, as we've said before with Uderzo, with some of his previous things, it sometimes gets him it's sometimes very difficult to grant him charity at this time. But this is a bit, this was, and I think Robert X put it in there as well. Like, I'm kind of a little bit like this. I love science fictions, but I don't particularly want it in my Asterix books either, just personally.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where it's coming from. Of all the issues I've got with this book, the fact that it's sci-fi is so low on the list, it's like it's not even registering. But I see where you're coming from. It is a bit weird, sci-fi in pre-biblical times. It's definitely got a very mind
you, it could have really, if this book had come out a couple of years later, I think it would have been really actually quite funny, because they could have had a lot of jokes at the expense of ancient aliens.
Yeah, they could have done. I think for me, my problem with this one is it was a bit political. Like, Asterix books occasionally will comment on the politics, but when it's being done, it's not being done well. And generally, when it is done in a book that's not a complete failure, it's being done on politics that would have been past tense when the book was written. So we've had books that have commented on things like the Second World War in the 60s. So there was that distance. This one, it's banging with its context.
This is
I think there was a failure to appreciate that these books are meant for children in this one.
There was a lot of I mean, you can kind of say that maybe some of the kids who read this might not have picked up on things the way as an adult you might do. What's this? When was this written? 2006 or 2007?
Yeah, 2000. Well, it was released 2005.
So there's a lot of war on terror kind of little references beneath the surface, and some of them I kind of appreciate. Some of them I do kind of appreciate that, because they're quite clever.
I appreciate them, but not in a children's book.
Yeah.
My problem with this is the war on terror in 2005 was everywhere.
Yeah.
And the one place I would hope it wouldn't be would be in an Asterix book released that year.
But As I said, though, I think if you were reading this as a kid, even at the time, you may not have picked up on this, but definitely as an adult, it was very easy to pick up on.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that I think I would have picked up on as a kid. Now, I would have been about 12-ish. Wait, yeah, I'd have been about 11 or 12 when this book came out. So there are some things that I would have picked up on. Kids that are younger than that these books are aimed at, maybe not necessarily. But I remember before this book was released, I remember the politics around it and the things that were going on. So to find it in an Asterix book is concerning to me, given that it was aimed at people younger than me.
And this is obviously, we've brought this up a little bit before, because we time and time again, I think I've brought up Charlie Hebdo and so on.
Yeah.
There was definitely a shift in some of the French with some French satire magazines, in particular Charlie Hebdo, around 9/11, and and a lot of it was Muslims very much became fair game.
Yeah.
And I've got like I said, look, I run an atheist channel, no problem with mocking religion in a certain way, but but I feel a lot of it was very lazy mocking.
There's a line,
and it was, and let's be honest, some of it was damn out racist mocking. It was, and I know you can say it's race and religion is not the same thing. The caricatures, though, were racist.
The caricatures were very obviously Middle Eastern caricatures of Islamic cultures.
And I will say that this Asterix book, to its credit, doesn't go down that route.
No, it doesn't, but it goes down other routes that I find quite problematic on the race front, or at least the nationality front. Yeah. There's some references to Japan that are a little bit difficult to swallow.
Yeah.
And I find some of while the War on Terror comments are appreciated, the way some of them are pitched and the way they're done occasionally, I'm picking my words very carefully, because I think, as with Charlie Hebdo, what we have to be aware of, that in France, in Britain, in America as well, at the time of this book, the War on Terror is 2005. It's still, it is the bombings, yeah.
7/7's 2005.
7/7 is 2005.
I would say my thing with this, and there are one or two things that are problematic. What will become fairly obvious in this is, and I think Uderzo, I think, was quite open about this. He did not care for Japanese anime at all.
No, he didn't.
In mangas, he didn't care for them. He didn't get them. Okay, I'm not. There's some mangas I quite like, but I got to be honest. Japanese anime is not one of my big. It's not something I'm a super fan of at all. I kind of can get the whole. I don't get the fascination with it, but it does kind of go down a little lines of, is there some Japanese caricatures in this?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's one thing to have a pop at manga as a Western comic, that I can live with. What I can't live with and don't particularly appreciate is the conflation of Western manga with Japanese caricatures, and the way it's presented in the text as if one is representative of all.
Yeah. See, this one's a bit. Yeah, I think this one's a bit.
Yeah,
I think
this one's a bit.
It's not blatant. No, I mean, I say it's not blatant, but it's obvious enough if you're looking for it.
I mean, it's not pirates and it's not feminists, but it's one of those that I think that's going to make it harder to explain if you're a parent with a kid.
Again, this is one of those. This is one of those things. This is one of those times when maybe and as Ring said, there's a seems to walk the line between maliciousness and laziness, and you can kind of think maybe there wasn't any harm intended, but again, it sometimes it has become a bit difficult to grant that amount of charity to Uderzo at this point after doing these streams for such a time now.
Well, as I was saying, that the problem is with this one is that because it walks that line between malicious and lazy, and because it's more subtle than thick-lipped pirates and feminists demanding trousers, because it's more subtle than that, it's going to be a lot more difficult to explain to a child and to explain away to a child.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I have issue with it. So that's your content advisory for this stream.
Okay.
Which I'm sure we'll get into. But I think we can have a look at this.
Yeah.
So
now I love the cover because this is a bit of a callback to the original Asterix, the Ghoul comic, cover of that.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a callback here, but it looks like he's sort of punching the air rather than a couple of Roman legionaries sort of thing. So
yeah. So off we go. And this one, I just want to take a moment. He did dedicate this book to his brother.
Yeah.
Who died the year before it was published. So that makes sense.
One thing as well that I think you'll see in this, that he does pay a lot of tribute to Disney in this as well.
He does.
Obviously, he may not have been a fan of manga, but definitely was a lover of Walt Disney's cartoons.
Yeah.
You'll see that. You'll see that little homage to Disney in this.
I would go so far to say what we've got here is Asterix and Disney teaming up to fend off Manga, and well, we'll get there. So we start off fairly standard opening for Asterix and Obelix. They're out, they're hunting boars. Or at least the first panel's fairly standard, and then immediately
something's wrong.
Yeah. The boars are stiff as a board.
He throws it away, totally inedible.
So the birds are singing, there's silence.
Everything's like everything's frozen. Like,
and off they go back to the village. And they arrive, and it's not just the boars.
No, it's the ghouls as well. It's the village.
Fully automatics, unhygienics. The chief's wife.
Yeah. It's like, they're all frozen in this sort of like rigid, sort of suspended animation kind of state.
It's like a time stop, isn't it? It's so and the thing we find is that Getafix was just brewing magic potion when this happened. And we get our little Sherlock Holmes reference here. which is a bit out of character for Asterix, but it's fun, so I'll allow it. We have Getafix who says, why have we been spared of this strange phenomenon? And Asterix says, elementary, the magic potion.
Yeah, which I believe, and I'm going to have to, I may be corrected on this, but I am currently in the process of going through Sherlock Holmes books. I don't think in the books he ever says elementary, my dear Watson.
He doesn't, no.
It's it seems to be a bit of a Hollywood later TV and film things.
Yeah.
It's same thing, similar thing like with the Deerstalker hat and so on. It's not a
they're
all later sort of like film and TV things.
Yes, Dogmatics is fine. Rain, he's there sniffing the bird and a bit confused.
Doggo's okay.
Doggo's fine. But we find then that this has happened.
So they think the magic potion is the sort of, so okay. Asterix has not long had one. Getafix is around it all the time.
And Obelix has been feeding it to Dogmatics on the sly.
Yeah. Only a few little drops, so it's like
yeah.
So at least I love that. At least I see that you retain your common sense.
So they've piled everyone up in the centre by the looks of it, and now they're going to try and find a cure. But Getafix says he can't find a cure until he knows the cause, which is fair.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And poor Obelix, soon he'll be a shadow of himself. I do like this image here of the shadow appearing.
Yeah. And
the bug eyes.
And
little Dogmatics here jumping into Obelix's.
He's scared.
So.
And also, Robert, it is very much the same as the "Beam me up, Scotty" line in Star Trek. That is.
Yeah. And as Ring said, the famous Tarzan yell. There are a lot of things
that was a Johnny. I'm pretty sure. Was that Johnny Weissmuller thing, or Ring? You have to correct me if I'm. I think that was something from the Johnny Weissmuller, but it was nothing to do with like the Tarzan, like the sort of literature around Tarzan, but that was before those films, definitely.
And then and I'm going to zoom out so we can see all of this, or at least most of it. We have a giant golden orb in the sky.
Yeah.
And it's not the sun, just to clarify.
You got to remember that one sort of superstition that the ghouls seem to have is about the sky falling on their heads in these books. That's their big superstition.
Yeah. So this is quite a frightening thing for them.
Yeah.
And then here they are, the little purple man with the Mickey Mouse ears and hands.
Yeah, this is what I mean. When you'll get to, there's an homage to Disney in this.
So they've got questions, and this little homage to Disney character.
Yeah, I mean that is an homage to Mickey Mouse. I mean,
it is. It's
not
definitely
just the ears, but like the button, the nose, the buttons,
even the facial
feet.
structure.
Yeah, the feet and the hands. This is an homage to Mickey Mouse.
And he's using a computer to translate.
Yeah.
And he's come from the distant star of Tadislueni.
Now, I'll just say about this word. Tadislueni is an anagram of Walt Disney.
It is. So again, it's not subtle.
No.
So Getafix is trying to translate, and Asterix doesn't understand. And this.
And yeah, I can see your civilization's much more primitive than ours, which Asterix takes offence to. And you can get this here. Are you trying to take the mickey? You know.
Yeah. I don't know if that would have been done in the French version, but that's again, it's not even subtle, is it?
It's not subtle. Yeah.
And then what is quite obviously an homage to Superman.
Yeah. And there's a little more to this. You'll see.
Captain America, I suppose.
There is a Superman thing, but if you see the next thing, this is also
that's
caricature of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That is Arnold, yeah.
And again, this probably would have been around about the time that Arnold Schwarzenegger was getting into politics, around about this time. When he ran for governor of California. I can't remember exactly when that was, but it would have been around about this time. It would have been topical. Arnold Schwarzenegger at this point in time.
Yeah, he gave a speech in 2004.
So
and he became governor of California in 2000. He announced his candidacy in 2003.
Yeah,
for governor of California. So
we're about then the right time period for this.
2003, yeah. So he's right in there.
Yeah.
So again, there's one thing I've noticed as well about this book: the artwork isn't the same quality we're used to either. The line work and the artwork is very. It's a lot more. It seems to be trying for the sci-fi style rather than.
I don't want to say Uderzo was phoning it in, but I think he was. It was. I think he's trying something different, and it doesn't really translate to me.
Yeah, it doesn't translate much at all, does it? So they create super clones, who have miscalculated our gravity, which is stronger than theirs. And their super clones keep the peace. Now, Captain America keeping the peace in 2003. Don't take a genius to point out where that's going. And they can fly.
So I mean, you got an Arnold Schwarzenegger caricature with a costume that's a blend of Superman and Captain America.
Flying.
And you notice as well. I don't know if you see the little flight. He's got a little. Looks like he's got a ring on him set there as well.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a little subtle Green Lantern reference there as well.
A little bit going on, isn't there? And the clone doesn't believe the Frenchman can do the same thing he can do with the magic potion. Again, not believe. And obviously Obelix knocks him for 6 for calling him fat.
Yeah, he only said fat chance. What was that? I am not fat.
Yeah. And they said, don't worry, the clone will get over being punched, and if necessary, they can redo him as either a spider or a bat super clone.
Yeah, I do quite like that. I quite like that.
Yeah.
That was one of the fun. That was on the little fun. That what did make me chuckle, actually.
This one is this little comment is very idealistic. He never bears a grudge, so your friend can ask him any little favor he likes.
Yeah.
If this character is meant to represent sort of American diplomatic policy, not so much. It's a bit idealized, isn't it? So Obelix asking him to fetch a wild boar.
Yeah. Doesn't quite go to plan, but we'll get there.
So now we find out that the reason everyone's frozen is because of an anti-collision magnetic field.
Yeah.
So
do something,
and the clones accidentally brought Roman soldiers.
Yeah, those are not wild boars. Romans are inedible, you big girl's tunica, kind of a Gallo-Roman blouse.
Not exactly, but I'll let you have it. I'll let you have it. A tunica's more like a dress than a blouse. It's probably the closest thing we've got to it in modernity would be something like a maxi dress. It was literally just a piece of material. It goes under sort of the other layers of chiffon, but it's literally just more like a pinafore than anything else. Goes over with a belt tied at the waist. It's very, very simple. So Obelix is not amused when this thing bonks him on the head. And then we see Getafix relieved that they can see the sun again and the village is coming back to life.
Yeah. Your knowledge of the graphic arts leads something to be desired, Obelix.
Yeah.
And considering that's interesting comment, considering that a lot of this book is taking shots at Japanese animation that will come in later.
Yeah. Unhygienic storing a fish up, fully automatics.
Yeah. And Cacophonics singing "If I Had a Hammer," and he got one.
And then he suddenly got one. Yeah. That one's mildly amusing. Start a fight as usual.
Yeah. Geriatrics isn't amused because they started without him.
Village back to normal. Getafix is pleased.
Yeah. So Obelix thought, well, let's go back in the forest, see if the boars have come back to. And the poor Romans now are like landed in the village. He says, "You Romans had it's like this, Mum. You'll laugh, but we had no idea how we got to." And they get a punching or whatever. They get
a kick in and booted out.
I like this. We live in an interesting time, Asterix, do we? So I wish they'd just get back to that civilized star of theirs.
That's an interesting comment. And we're finally going to find out why the Purple Corporation and his superhero security guard are here.
Yeah.
There's only so many ways I can describe this without making the points that are being made quite obvious. So I'm not going to try.
Yeah. And I was like to sort of say that, on about it's I didn't know there was going to be a fancy dress party, and he says, well, maybe it's the new Roman legionaries uniform. And I like the fact how odd you lot all look different. Back at home, says we're all identical. It makes us easier to recognize each other. Asterix is like, which I don't know. I might be reading too much into that comment. I don't know, but
what do you think?
Wondering if, we are, because obviously we are going to get to, things with Japanese little references or whatever. The sort of standard joke that's sort of sometimes said about like foreigners for people in the West.
Yeah.
Like Asians, like people.
In particular, yeah.
I will say there was he sadly passed away a few weeks ago, but it was a work colleague of mine who's originally Chinese and used to actually say to us, "Oh, you bloody English look the same to me."
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so it was kind of funny because he turned it back on us. Like, is
Yeah.
that? But that maybe I'm reading too much into that. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. It's a valid reading. I took it more as Disney. If you ever look at the human beings in Disney movies, they all look very similar.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of variation in them, so I took it a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Though I suppose either way. Geriatrics is not pleased that his wife is eyeing up Arnie.
Yeah.
And Vital Statistics is not pleased at the appearance of these, quote, oddballs. Beings from another world who've come all the way here in their odd metal ball.
And the sky is falling on our heads. And
well, someone's falling on their heads.
Yeah. And I wish I knew what this was all about. I'll take those two weirdos to. Now the thing, of all the ones who have the superstition about the sky falling on their heads, Vital Statistics, that does seem to be his big. How often does he say about the sky falling on his head?
Every other book, at least.
Yeah, he is the most superstitious about this.
Yeah, he is. And then we've got this little comment from our character. So you're all Getafix asks. So you're all spaced out. Sorry, no, that's Vital Statistics. You're all spaced out, are you? You must be over the moon to have come down to Earth. And this comment: we're from a galaxy of 50 stars, all of them at peace with their neighbours.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, yeah.
Are we sure about that?
Not so subtle.
That's not subtle at all.
You see, he said, no, our stars burned out years ago, but we travel faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
And he said, the Galactic Council of the Wise has sent me to warn you of the real present danger, the Nagmas, which is obviously that's an anagram of manga.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And then here we go. We fear only one thing: the sky falling on our heads. These two panels, I'm going to leave there while we talk.
Let's have a look. Okay, let me read them again, though, just boy.
So our character from the 50 at peace stars knows that the village has a secret weapon.
Yeah.
And he's claiming that the Nagmas are going to get hold of it. And therefore they must confiscate it to keep it safe.
Yeah.
Go.
I'll say this much about it. At least the ghouls actually do have a weapon of mass destruction. Unlike the massive stockpiles that were supposedly.
Yeah, I mean, we've got more than a dossier and a dead scientist to prove it in the Asterix books.
And I've got to say, this is 2005 as well. This is about the time as well when a lot of the stuff in Blair's dossier came to light of just how much that had been sensationalized, and they tried. Between Britain and the United States, they tried to sell the UN on that dossier. It was.
Yeah.
We all know. I mean, it's like one of those. And lo and behold, we got to a point a number of years later in Iraq. They gave up looking for weapons of mass destruction because the council goes, well, they clearly didn't have any.
Yeah. We should point out 2005, the book would have been written 2003, 2004.
So,
the context of that, the Hutton inquiry.
Well,
And the inquiry into the death of Dr. Kelly, who was the weapons expert who
dies rather unexpectedly.
He died in a forest where he used to walk his dogs, and somehow
it was a suicide.
This 60-odd-year-old man managed to hang himself with climb a tree and hang himself somehow.
I mean, I'm not, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. But even that's kind of still got to make me think
that was dirty.
Something. There's questions I have about that.
Yeah, we've all listen. He was exhumed again in 2017, so quite clearly there's questions.
But unfortunately, it's kind of an academic thing that it's not gonna.
Yeah,
because unfortunately, because of all the I mean, I'm not getting too much into my politics of this. Of all the people I wanted to see held to account over what happened over the Iraq War, to me, Tony Blair was the worst of them all.
Yeah,
because he was worse. He was worse than Bush. He was because Tony Blair was the one going around all the foreign leaders trying to get them involved in this.
Well,
he was
he
was the one whose dossier. It was that dossier was his. And
well, it came out, didn't it? That Blair apparently told Bush, better to ask forgiveness than permission. And there was also the comment at the end of it all, during the Iraq inquiry, there was a comment Blair passed that he was asked, Blair, after he left as Prime Minister, it came out as Catholic.
No, he was well known. He was Roman Catholic.
He was well known as a Catholic, but he kind of kept it under wraps as PM. And the comment was passed. Someone said to him, "So the war's now been found to have been unlawful. What have you got to say to the mothers and the wives and the families of the people who went out there and died?" And his comment was passed was, "That's between me and God."
Yeah.
Which
he's a disgusting human being, Tony Blair, and I just with all the people I wanted to see held accountable, that was I have to he to me is the worst of the bunch there. He was the absolute worst of the bunch. But unfortunately, every attempt there's been to hold him to account has failed. Every inquiry.
We're talking about a man who started an illegal war as Prime Minister and then left the job as Prime Minister and went to become the UN peace envoy to the area he'd started a war in.
Yeah.
The guy's just untouchable. Shit don't stick to him.
It's I mean,
Teflon Tony.
I'm not being funny. You knew satire was dead when you heard the term Tony Blair peace envoy.
Yeah, exactly. Teflon Tony.
And for those who don't know British politics as well, allegedly Tony Blair's party is supposed to be the party of the left. And the sad thing was that quite often during this time in the war on terror, especially with some of the stuff that was getting like when he was trying to hold terror suspects on, just violating civil liberties. I felt it was a sad state of affairs when the Tories were the ones defending decent civil liberties from a Labour Prime Minister. And I will say, in fairness, the reason it failed was that about a significant section of Blair's own MPs did fight against him on this, including the likes of like the Corbyns and McDonald's of this world, but
it was weren't they trying for something like 42 days detention without trial at one point?
90. It was already. He wanted it wanted it up to 90 days without even charging them. With anything.
90 days without charge.
Yeah, that was what he was. And when the goddamn when the fucking Conservative Party
are the
ones being decent in British politics, you know something is fucking wrong.
Yeah. It was just, I was, like I said, I was a young teenager seeing all that. And so my understanding of it is hazy at best. I was, I was paying attention to maths and English at that age, not politics as such, but I was aware of it.
I became very radicalized in that era because of the Iraq War.
Yeah,
a generation of, I will say, a generation I have never known in my lifetime. To give you an idea of just how unpopular that it was. I mean, I think it's a miracle that Blair got re-elected in 2005, and
I think the only reason he did was because what was the alternative?
The Tories were in such disarray themselves as well at that time. But he got his majority really slashed because the previous two he'd won by a landslide. But I have never known in Britain so many people be so angry about a political issue as they were about Blair taking us into Iraq.
Yeah. Well, the Iraq protests were my first protests. They were the first time I went on protests.
Well, we had. There was one in London.
Funny story about that.
2 million people.
No, there was some in Bradford as well, where I am. And funny story about that. My parents didn't want me to go, and they were on a weekend. I think they were on a Saturday one day. And so I told my parents, "I'm going into town. I'm going to the library," which I used to do sort of every other weekend. And I went to the protest instead. Parents didn't have a clue I was there.
Well, to give you a context, in Southampton. Now, normally, like the local trades union council or someone like that, if there's a big demonstration for something up in London, they're normally in charge of organising the coach up there. And normally it is a case of, even for big demos, you normally get a coach, maybe 2 coach loads of people for a good one.
Yeah.
We had 26 coaches from Southampton go up to London for that.
26 alone from Southampton.
From Southampton, which is not I'm not being funny. Most protests you have in the city of Southampton, you are going to get
27 bus loads.
You're going to get maybe about 4 or 5 bus loads. That is how angry people were. People were ever been political about anything.
Like I said, I wasn't even in double digits, and I was enraged. I was incensed because we were horrified. We all knew well before he put boots on the ground in Iraq, we knew there was no basis for that war. We knew the dossier was sexed up if it existed at all. We knew that.
At the end of the day, people knew.
And it was just,
people knew we were going into we were being brought into a war with where we knew that there had been no act of aggression against us, and we were going in there to overthrow a regime. As horrible as that regime was, we were following Bush in there. We knew that we were going in there with a totally unprovoked attack on another nation.
Because that was the thing. What we knew then was we were following the Americans into there. The Americans were using 9/11 as the excuse, but the truth was they were going in there for the oil.
And
we all knew that.
I gotta say, because this is one of my big bugbears with because one of the big heroes in the atheist community was Christopher Hitchens. Yeah, he was over Iraq. Christopher Hitchens was fucking awful. He was just a cheerleading for Blair's warmongering all the fucking way. It was disgusting. Perhaps I kind of wish some of these sort of more left-leaning atheists who worship Hitchens fucking now I will say a lot of them have gotten better, I will say, but I wish some of them would go and look at what Hitchens' position on like Iraq and stuff and see how fucking awful he was. Anyway, I think we've taken a major detour there. But
we've taken a major detour, but it's important that we give the context of what that comment is about.
I think it's important just to be aware this was a period of time that radicalized me politically.
But I think
in a big way.
The problem is as well that this book was in 2005. And it was right in the context of everything we're talking about. And Asterix never got political like that before. And that's annoying to me because this is a kid's book. And as a kid at the time, I would have been really annoyed. Okay, we were getting the war on terror from every angle. I'm probably the last generation that remembers life before 9/11. And we were getting it from every angle. And then to open a children's book and get it as well, it just, what a kick in the teeth.
I've got to say, I think one time when I talked about, I think 9/11 was mentioned, like and maybe realise how old I feel I am now. That I was on, I think it was Tom, I had with Sam on the stream, and of course, Sam, they're only 18.
They don't remember it,
and it's like, wow, you know, we've had people on my streams who were born after 9/11, so it's like scary where that time's gone, really.
Yeah, I mean, I remember
it's coming up on 20 years. It is 20 years this year.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like 20 years because it was blown up so much and it was used so much in the propaganda as well that the time just doesn't seem to have passed in the same way. But anyway, moving on, because we've been on this for a good 15
we're on this
minutes
for a long time, but we do have to note this is so clearly references to Iraq, references to the war on terror.
Yeah. And I mean, in Uderzo's defense, he's quite scathing about the approach that was taken. Which I'm not sure about. Well, from what I gather of what you've said, I personally think he's got a fair point. So anyway, we've got Fully Automatics pointing out that he was this Superman size when he was younger. And come on, the fight there. Nice people, they have odd ways of amusing themselves, says Mickey. And Asterix is chasing them down. He wants to know more. This comment here. Do you know what our secret weapon actually is? No, but judging by the results when you fight your enemies, it must work very well. Like, this is not even subtle. This is not even subtle. Like, you know, is it biological? Is it chemical? We don't know.
Is it nuclear?
No idea. But we know it's going to work.
I think the one again, let's not try to dwell too much on about this, but at the time I remember the big thing they were saying was biological and chemical was which
they were saying that
I will definitely say there was
chemical and biological against his own people at one point.
Oh, he had. I mean, there's no two ways that he had. And we knew that there was at least one time when he did have these weapons. Do you know how we know that?
The Americans sold them to him.
Because us the Americans fucking sold him the weapons in the first place. But by the time
to him back in the 90s to take on the Russians.
By 2003, he'd had a lot of that structure of that dismantled.
Yeah. What a lot of people don't realise is that, I'm not going to say his name because I don't know if we'll get flagged for saying his name.
Possibly.
But that guy who died by hanging during all of it the reason he was in power and the reason he had those weapons is because in the 80s he'd been given those weapons by the CIA to fight the Russians when the Russians were in Afghanistan. It was part of a proxy war. No, was it Afghanistan?
He had an 8-year-long war with Iran.
Iran, that was the one. But the CIA were funding him for a long time. And MI5 also had a finger in the pie.
Well, I remember about a year before the first Gulf War, it was just about the time that guy was starting to get on our shit list, when we had the quote unquote massive oil pipeline that was being put through British ports. And now let's just put it this way: most oil pipelines are not rifled. The super gun. And I will tell you, there's a couple of sections of that at the Royal Armouries just outside Portsmouth, and this thing is big enough. You and I both could easily crawl down the barrel of this and have room. Which will give you an idea of how big this thing was going to be. This is so. You know, there was definitely a time when this guy was trying to get massive weapons. You know, did have and was trying to acquire.
But trying to acquire them and having them is two different things, especially when the people he was trying to acquire them from were the same people who then turned around and went to war against him for claiming to have them. Anyway.
Well, as Bill Hicks said, how do you know they got weapons? We looked at the receipts, but once that check clears, we're going in.
Yeah, that's a very pointed comment.
Anyway,
so these two soldiers have gone back to their centurion now, and they've said, there was a giant orb in the sky, and it was floating, and he thinks they're drunk, and he's going to have them locked up. Because that's what you do to drunk soldiers, apparently.
Told you he'd never believe us.
Yeah, and then suddenly he sees it. Now, am I the only one? Does anyone remember? I think it was it Toy Story 2? With the character Buzz Lightyear's father character looking at this.
I've got to say something. I have never watched any of the Toy Story movies. So you're on your own on that reference, I'm afraid. I have not. I have not watched.
Was it Toy Story? I think it was Toy Story 2. Not the one with the. It was the one with the chicken man, but it was the other.
I've seen clips.
Emperor Zurg.
Yeah, I've seen a few clips from Toy Story films, but I've never watched them. That's going to sound very strange to a lot of people. That's something I have never watched.
Yeah. It was Toy Story 2 that had Emperor Zurg, and that looks like Emperor Zurg was purple, but otherwise it's that. That's what that is. It's definitely got that look about it, hasn't it, of the 90s villain. So that's taking off. So everyone running away.
Yeah.
The Romans are horrified. Come on.
By Jupiter, what's that
and
monster?
Now we have this new monster appearing.
Yeah.
Take us to your leader. It's very standard.
I like almost slightly like the opposite of I'm Spartacus here. Who's your leader? And they're all going, him.
Him. Who's your leader? He is. He is, and so's his wife. It's got that going on about it.
And he actually points out about the deadly weapon, and he's like, "Oh, you mean the magic potion? That's those ghouls are down the road, you know."
So off they go again. Blowing up the camp at the same time keeps the soldiers busy.
I like this. right, now he's gone, let's forget this whole thing and put this camp back in order and jump to it. Who's your leader, may I ask?
There's a snarky comment there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the village.
Mm.
These
this is
Nagmas who scale so much.
Yeah.
They come from the planet Mana and want to be sole masters of the universe, which is quite obviously a reference to Manga there.
Mm.
Again.
Yeah. And you see that, which is weird because to me that I don't think that character looks too much like anything out of a Japanese anime. I mean, there's little characteristics that are.
Yeah, I mean, it's got kind of the eyes and the classic anime hair, hasn't it? I think the armor is a reference to something from Beyblade, which was quite popular at the time. Mm-hmm. I'm really scratching my memory trying to come up with that.
And is it our great sage? Our great sage on our home worlds. This one saying to Asterix is Hubs, which is
the reference for Bush.
That's an anagram of Bush.
I've got to say, it is a bit of a stretch calling Bush a sage. This man who, it's kind of weird because looking back on it now,
only if you compare him to what they've had over the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's weird because looking back at the time, we used to take shreds out of the Americans because your president can't string a sentence together. Your president's an idiot, But and then you see what America has had since then, and we just sort of look and we go, "Can you not bring Bush back?"
It's like the good old days,
Yeah, the good old days when you had Bush and Reagan, who, while they were idiots, they could at least string a sentence together occasionally and read. Although Reagan only ever liked a single side of A4 double-spaced 12-point type for his briefs. So, America, when we say your president is really stupid, that's not a challenge. Please don't do it again. Please learn your lesson.
Yeah. Well, I got to be honest though. I mean, we've got Boris now, so we can't look down on Americans with too much superiority anymore.
We can't, can we?
We just can't because we've got Boris.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, the thing about Boris is he plays the fool, but he's actually a nasty piece of work, and he's a lot more intelligent than he seems.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Trump really just was that thick. So yeah, swings and roundabouts. Yeah, Ring. It does look like it's that had a bit of the samurai armor about it. But anyway, so we've got they've had that. And they've been invited to taste their favorite food, which is a hot dog. And Asterix does not approve.
Really?
This just amuses me so much.
I'm going to say again, very, very obvious American kind of references here. Like, is America on the great civilizing mission? But that was a funny one. That's
funny to me. The idea of offering a Frenchman a hot dog, that's just funny to me. Especially as the French are kind of known for having some of the best cuisine in the world, and then you offer that. And I've been drunk in my time. I've been pretty damn drunk in the past. I would have to have had a fair few to want to eat something that looks like that. Is the only thing I can say for that.
Generally, I will say anytime. I will say when I've been to some football matches or something, it's either hot. It's a very close call. I tend to go with a hot dog rather than a pucker pie. To be honest.
Yeah, but yeah, I wait until it's finished and I go to Burger King. I'm not one for match day food at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It used to match day food used to be a pie and Bovril. That was match day food.
Yeah, it was a pork pie and a cup of Bovril.
Yeah.
That was all right. But it just no. But anyway, so the balls are in good health again.
Yeah.
And Obelix thinks that the
Romans have gone a little too far this particular time.
So what sort of weirdo is this? If you have big heap deadly okay, the way this character speaks, I am not giving this any ground. This was something I wanted to comment on. The way this character speaks. It's very pointed, and frankly, it's racist. The way this character speaks is very. What's the film based in Vietnam? You Give Me Shoes. It's got that kind of tone to it, and I don't like it.
Hold on. I'm trying to remember which.
You know which one I'm on about, the Vietnam War film, Private Pile, the Kubrick film.
Full Metal
That's
Jacket.
the one. Yeah. It's got that to it, and it's gross. And I'm not going to sit here and defend it, but I've shown it. I've chosen to show it because, again, we're streaming on my channel. I've chosen to show it so you can see it. That
now is
not appropriate.
Yeah.
That's another one to be going to read that New York Times article about how to read a racist book to your kids and deal with that if you're showing your kid this book.
Yeah, I mean, it gets worse, I think, a couple of panels down.
It does. And I will show it.
Me found deadly weapon.
Yeah, it's very
and I will say something about one of the names that he said there.
Yes.
That's another anagram. That is I'm probably going to butcher the pronouncement, but it's an anagram of Takao Aoki.
It's the guy who created Beyblade. Yeah. And again, this it's all very stereotypical, and I don't like it. The poses, the sounds, I just
Sorry, I just need to get painkillers noodle. I'll be back shortly.
Yeah. It's I'm just scrolling through this so people can see it, because if you're going to show your kids this, please show them it critically. Don't just leave them to it. And speaking of, on a side note, if you're going to show your kid any old Dr. Seuss books, please also show them it critically. Just, because that's been in the news. Obelix giving them a beating. Dogmatics has disappeared, as of the boars. And then we're back in Asterix's hut, and I will wait for Scummer there. I lost all patience and all willingness to give Uderzo the benefit of the doubt several books ago. And after that, we can safely say that he's equal opportunities racist. Again, I cannot emphasize enough. I've said it twice. I'm going to say it again. Please, if you're showing this to a child, please have the discussion with them. Don't just leave them to it, because kids will absorb this, and it's not the kind of thing we want kids just taking in uncritically. We just don't. That's not to say don't show your kids at all. I'm a great believer in parents actually sitting down with their kids and reading with them and having these difficult discussions, because if they're old enough to see it in a book, they're old enough to discuss it. But just, yeah. Pretty gross. And I'll be honest, this entire book is a bit iffy with the politics and everything else, but that is a serious low point. And it's a concern, especially this is 2005, 2006. This is in living memory. And when I say living memory, I mean the living memory of the youngest people who are possibly going to be interacting with us. It's in my living memory, which is the first one I can say for the release of one of these books. And I would like to have think that we would have called that out even in 2005. It was not appropriate at all. I've just got the message from Scummer that he'll be back in 2 minutes. But yeah, Robert, as you said, maybe I would hope that at least those who had the benefit of a progressive education in 2005 would have called it out. But yeah, it was not there. So this, and again, this comment, I'm just gonna, from the little Mickey Mouse who we've established represents the American ideal, talking about how the Nagmas are envious and vindictive and copy the scientific knowledge of Toon and Toon's people and Toon's 50 stars. This would have been around the time things sort of, a lot of production was moving to China and Japan, of small scale things, smaller technologies and things like that. And there was a technological, in inverted commas, Cold War going on at the time.
Sorry to keep you waiting there, Noodle.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just talking, talking through this about the technological.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it a technological arms race, because it wasn't, because it was a cultural.
Yeah.
There was a lot of cultural development going on, and it was all being done by private companies, but it was happening very quickly. This was smack in the middle of sort of the silicon boom of the early 2000s as well.
Yeah. I was just going to say one thing, because I think both Ring and I were on a stream with Jen earlier today, and the Dr. Seuss thing came up. And I will just say one thing about that. Anyone's watching this, no, those books are not being cancelled.
No, they're being.
They're not. They are being taken out of circulation, and I believe they're going to be amended before they go back into circulation.
Yeah, I mean, so I have issues with that, but
yeah, I mean, because there, which could lead to a bit of a debate, or whether that is the best approach, or whether there needs to be like a disclaimer kind of thing, of looks, some of the, in the books of, look, some of these things don't hold up too well, sort of thing, which wouldn't be a bad idea for some of these books, to be honest. These Asterix
wouldn't
books.
be. I do think as well, if they're gonna do it with Dr. Seuss, they should be doing it with books like this as well.
Yeah, like this and Tintin, you know.
Yeah, but my concern with the Dr. Seuss books is if your kid's reading Dr. Seuss and you're not sat with them, reading over their shoulder with them, something's wrong anyway. So you should be able to age appropriately point out why those things weren't acceptable, and it shouldn't be down to the publisher to do that. Be a parent. But yeah. This comment about the mangas or the Japanese copying the technology again.
Yeah.
A lot of politics in this book.
It is, but there's an element of truth to that. Because yeah, I mean, yeah, that Japan did learn and borrow techniques from Britain and America around manufacturing, and same thing with China.
Like we didn't borrow technology from them.
And you know, and as a result, they actually not only caught up but surpassed. I believe I think Leon Trotsky had a little analysis of something like this called combined and uneven development, but it's a long, but it is sort of one of the things it is saying that, you know, countries and whatever, they don't necessarily develop at the same rate. You can and that's not just necessarily with technology. That can be with ideas as well, and even like political ideas. Like for example, you think about like the working classes in Britain and say Russia at the time.
We were in two different political spaces.
Now, however, like when Russians first formed trade unions, the actual idea that women should not be allowed to be part of the trade union was just completely foreign to them. Why not? Absolutely. In Britain, it took like some unions 150 years to allow women into the trade unions, and then it was in like some separate section to be not insulting to the men. I mean, if you want to look at any country that is actually really technically very slow about how it's developed over the years, is Britain.
And I will say, give the Russians their due. Whenever they have any sort of progressive politics or anything else, women have always got a seat at the table. Maybe not in the upper echelons, but there's always a space for women there.
That's the thing that can apply. But you know, it's something that can apply to ideas as well as technology. Is the point I'm trying to make there.
So anyway, this is Dogmatics is invisible.
Yeah.
And this is the work of the Nagma.
Yeah. And our friend here sorts him out quite easily. We can counter all their weapons just as they can counter ours. That's the problem.
Is anyone else getting mutually assured destruction vibes from that quote?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, this is post-Cold War, but that's
it's the same concept, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because I will say, Uderzo has touched on the Cold War before, even when that was going on. I mean, we read The Great Divide, which was very clearly a Berlin Wall kind of reference, and
and this one, the bard now has spotted a strange flying object making for the village. And it's that evil thing we saw previously. Yeah. And it's taken out the bard's house and used it as a landing pad.
Yeah.
And Cacophonix has jumped out.
This time he's really brought the house down.
It wasn't his fault this time, in his defense. So now we've got this is what I mean by this is a very stereotypical sort of villainous robot, isn't it?
Yeah.
With the wings and the it's got it all going on. And so now the Toon has protected the village from going up in smoke. And he's saying, I told you the Nagmas are dangerous. And again, this is what I mean by the war on terror permeates this book.
Yeah.
And I find it troublesome that the Nagmas is not only, it's quite obviously a thing about manga, but because of the undercurrent of the war on terror, they also are the placeholders for the enemy in that war. And that is a problem because then there's a racial element of Toon can't tell the difference, which given America's history with Japan as well is problematic at best. I'm choosing my words very carefully in this one because this one's very complex and it's a bit.
He's come and say, look, he wants now. He's saying he wants to make peace. He'll make a better offer than the other guy. Exchange for deadly earth weapon.
And Obelix is pointing out this guy talks funny again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Asterix is. This is what I mean by this artwork being incredibly problematic when you see the armor taken off.
Yeah.
That's not an accident, and I'm showing it because it's. If you're showing this to a child, you need to explain the origins of this kind of artwork.
It's
and why
reminding me of that.
It's a bit of a yellow man thing going on, isn't it?
Which was that book that there was the character in there like this, the sort of fish man thing, which I forget which was it, Belgian one? I can't remember.
Was it the Magic Carpet?
No, it might have been the Belgian one. I can't quite remember.
If you've got a child reading this, you need to point out to them why the yellow character with devilish horns and you need to be having that discussion with a child, please. So and they use rats as
rats, robot warriors.
So it's going to be rats versus superheroes.
Yeah.
And vital statistics, please fight your war outside of the village.
Yeah.
Good luck with that vital statistics. Your village has just become the battleground in a proxy war. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And this is where there's no arguing with what this is supposed to symbolize.
Reminds me a bit of the that's right, Ring. It was The Great Divide. That was the book. This, I mean, kind of reminds me of some Golden Age superhero comics, though. At the same time, you could.
I mean, it's obvious that's what it's going for as well. But
if you see it, if you see any of the old World War II era DC or timely comics, as it would have been then before it was Marvel. You see that the pictures like Captain America punching out the Japanese or whatever. It's pretty damn obvious how.
I've just realised what it is that bothers me about this. Uderzo should have either gone down the route of commenting on the influx of manga into the Western market, or gone down the route of commenting on the war on terror, not both at the same time, because this conflation is causing issues, and it's because it's conflated, it's incredibly problematic. because it strongly suggests to me that Uderzo doesn't know the difference between anime creators, and i.e. the Japanese, and the enemy in the war on terror.
Mm.
And especially from a Frenchman, with the history they have with Vietnam and that artwork we've just looked at, I have serious concerns.
Yeah, and again, we could be, like I said, we could be reading way too much into this, but we said it many times. At this point, how much charity can we actually grant this guy?
I no longer give this guy charity. I ran out of charity for this guy somewhere around book like 20 odd.
Yeah.
And this is 2006. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
So they are now watching this battle. And in the mouth of Asterix are the words, "I hope Walt Disney wins." Because I'm not going to try and read out that anagram, because it's, yeah, I hope Walt Disney wins. I hope America wins, he says. And again, that's nuclear, that with the imagery.
Yeah.
All that noise for nothing. So it's quite clearly some sort of sonic weapon.
Yeah.
And again, with I think this just highlights the combination when you see the way it's drawn along with the language is just not appropriate. They're now talking about sharing the weapons 50-50. Again, this is what I mean by the village became a proxy war.
Yeah.
And I don't particularly want to linger on these images because of the way this alien character is drawn.
Yeah, I find, again, the way he's talking as well is problematic, considering the way the other character talks.
Yeah. Druid is now in danger because they know where he is. They want the magic potion, so they must get out and take shelter. And this line from Geoff, if that's the price we must pay for peace, let's give them what they came for. The magic potion has gone from being the weapon to being reparations by now, I think.
Yeah.
And they get a jar of the potion, but Asterix doesn't trust the Nagma, because of course he doesn't.
Yeah.
And it gives them superhuman strength. Obelix appears.
Yeah.
Obelix is going to throw his manea. Asterix has caught it. The character
many of all their national sport.
Obelix has had the Nagmas had the potion, but the Meneas crushed him. And so their constitution is different from ours. The language there is not accidental. The multiple meanings of the word constitution.
Yeah.
The context of this is not accidental. And off the Nagma goes. They expect him to want revenge.
Yeah.
And he's setting his cyber rats on the village.
Yeah.
And off Toon goes to get reinforcements.
So he's going back for his spaceship. Here come the super clones. We decided to take Asterix and Obelix for a spin here.
Yeah. So we now have an air battle.
Yeah.
And
Obelix throws them, which becomes like a air-to-air missile.
Mm-hmm.
So
the ones do a good job.
Yeah. Oculus Tori, bullseye.
Yeah. Obelix wants to swap a super clone for a Mania.
Yeah.
And this character comes along and tries to kidnap Getafix.
Yeah. Must save Getafix. He said, I'll go back to my spaceship again. He said, like,
So they try to take Getafix with them.
Yeah, you don't trick me. I'll give you the.
Yeah.
And he's about to take off of him. He's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Yeah.
Getafix warns him.
Stopped it.
Yeah. It's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they bump into the other spaceship. Tuna stopped it in his tracks, yeah. And how are we going to get Getafix out of it? And then I did like this little callback. I climbed the Sphinx once, Asterix. You remember, I can climb this head of iron too. Now we've got to remember what happened when Obelix climbed on the Sphinx.
He broke the nose.
He broke the nose off.
And so Druid gets thrown out of the spaceship. But he's caught at the last minute by one of our super clones. This comment here, even if they can't tell Boars from Romans, they're good little lads. There's a lot to be read into that. I'm not going to do it, but there's a lot that could be read into that comment.
Yeah.
Yes, this is another fine mess you've got me into in homage to the great Gallo-Roman actors Loris and Hardius.
Yeah.
I sincerely doubt that's the same joke in other versions, in other countries' versions.
Yeah. I mean, Uderzo's done a job before. He did an animation of Laurel and Hardy in Caesar's Gift, didn't he? As a couple of Roman legionaries.
Yeah.
Which was very good. But yeah, I get a feeling this was almost just a little English version joke. It may be in other versions. I don't know.
Yeah. So now they've got to get out of there while these characters take off. I've got to say, I've got major problems with the manga Japanese character causing explosions everywhere they go.
Yeah.
With that.
You've got a little panel you might just want to skip over ever so slightly.
Yeah, the pirates there.
Yeah. He crashes his rocket into the sea, just so happening to be when the pirates are. I'm going to say these are going to be the most unlucky pirates in the world. I mean, you'd think they'd actually given up piracy by now.
Yeah, I mean, they tried at one point, didn't they?
Yeah, they tried it.
And it still backfired on them. The rocket, no longer a damp squid, is back on course. And it's never coming back. Meanwhile, at the Roman camp, they've seen it leaving. And they've told the Centurion, again, this is not what you think it is.
And he's promoting them to Optios, which is a NCO, obviously, as he said, it's an NCO in the
they've gone from corporal to sergeant, or they've gone from private to corporal. That's all that's happened there, depending on which rank structure you want to use.
Legionaries, this village of those crazy invincible Gauls has been razed to the ground. We shall now occupy it for the greater glory of Rome. And yes, sir.
Yeah. And then
they're quite happy with Toon.
And so Toon's going to report back to the Great Galactic Council, the Intergalactic UN, I suppose.
And you see, I was almost fooled reading this, that I thought we'd get to the end. Almost felt like,
yeah.
What, or are we missing a page because the Romans are coming? What's going on? Because we get the panel here of them having a banquet.
Yeah.
In honor of this, Scott. So it's like, okay.
So
it's almost like the traditional end scene of the book, isn't it?
Yeah. And the bad's gone into the forest and they're eating, but it's not over. The bad's in the forest.
Yeah.
He hears footsteps. Romans are coming.
Yeah.
He's gone back and he's warning the Romans are coming.
Of that. Obelix saying it's not true. It's not true. He's saying that just to please me.
And then so Toon is now going to get to see why they take the magic potion.
Yeah.
And they're going to convince the Romans that they were flattened by the monstrous machine. Again. They're going to move the sphere away so that the Romans don't see it. They can see the village.
Funny thing, since like our camp, their village seems to be intact.
Yeah.
And can you not see it's on fire?
And so the attack comes out of the walls.
Yeah.
Typical crash, boom, bang.
What do you think of that? Pity your magic potion wouldn't do us any good, you know. But it turns out it does have an effect on him.
Yeah. This comment here, we apologize for fearing the power of your secret weapon. Oh, anyone can make a mistake.
Yeah. We've talked about it enough, I think.
Yeah.
We've talked about it enough.
This comment, forgetting that we're the Mr. Bigs of the entire universe. Anyway, the arrogance. They got the arrogance right. I'll give him that.
Watch it, but if you watch them,
yeah,
he is getting bigger.
He's getting big. An inflated violet. I think there's a Willy Wonka joke in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's a Willy Wonka Violet Beauregard joke. That one.
The potion working on his inflated idea of himself. He needs a shrink. And how's he supposed to get in his space sphere? The potion isn't permanent. He'll be back to normal soon. Asterix having his little dig there about the Mr. Big comment. He's not the only one feeling the after effects. It looks like the
other guy
growing
the
as
other
well.
one's to the point where he's outgrowing his ship whilst he's in it.
Yeah. And of course Toon is starting to get annoyed that he's growing.
Yeah.
Getting back to his proper size or he shall lose his temper.
That almost reminds me, I mean, I'm sure that almost reminds me of the giant Mickey Mouse flying over in South Park. Flying over them, destroying the city, like, you know.
Yeah, a little bit. Getafix is going to try and find a solution. This is a really nice image. This image here is just quite cute. This is quite amusing.
Yeah, I like that one.
Making my head go round and round. It's just cute. I like that one. And at last dawn over the village, and Getafix has been up all night, and he thinks he's found the recipe. Asterix isn't sure, but he's not arguing too much
at this point. Yeah.
And so Gedfix gives him the potion. And he's shrinking, but he's changed colour.
Yeah.
He's now black.
On the wrong cut. He looks more like Mickey Mouse than ever.
Yeah. He's he added indelible cuttlefish ink.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, he's like, I think that's I think it suits you.
Yeah. But he's still not happy. So he's gonna take concentrated Parma violets, which will change his colour again.
Yeah. Which it does.
Which it does. And he's going back to his own star now, finally. After he's got
I'll
his
never
colour
want to. Yeah, and I'm never going to taste any ghoulish potions again. It's
very... He's learned his lesson.
Yeah.
And then he goes up there and he says he can work miracles too. Can our little toon. He can make it so they remember nothing about him and obliterate all traces of this grotesque adventure. Can he do it for me too, please? I think that's a bit meta there.
Yeah.
What's Disney doing? He's going to crush us all.
This is before the acquisition of Star Wars and Marvel. Let's be.
Yeah. So off it goes. The bird is not pleased, and they've done the same above the Roman camp, and now off they go, leaving Earth.
Yeah.
They've left a smog behind.
Strange sort of smog, especially for this time of year. Cacophonix realises his hut's been burnt down.
Yeah, his tree and both burnt down. And so vital statistics disorder.
And I love the fact, because he thinks it's fully automatics who's done this.
Yeah.
This time you've gone too far. You have to rebuild what you destroyed. Understand what? I can help make a tree grow very fast with seed mansions of the gods. Yep. So the callbacks are there.
Yeah, and then Obelix and Asterix out hunting for boar again. It's a good crop. A very good crop. So this is back to basically the start of the story, isn't it, where they don't know what's happened. And Obelix trying to understand how he managed to eat so much of his stock without noticing. And it seems ages since they had a boar. And so having lost all memory of the last adventure, they decided to have a banquet just because. And of course, from the top, again, this has got to be...
And I love this because remember, they think it was unhygienics and fully automatics did this to Cacophonix. Yeah. But she looked down as well because he thought they were the ones responsible. They're the ones who get tied to the tree and gagged up for the night, and Cacophonix is allowed to sing.
Yeah.
And I have been noticing in some of these books recently, Cacophonix is a little bit more getting his own back on them too.
He is a little bit, yeah. I do like the song he's singing there as well. I don't know if it's the same in European versions. I sincerely doubt it.
Do what did it? Man for man. Yes, man for man, isn't it?
Was just walking down the streets.
Yeah. Yeah, they're singing man for man.
Yeah. So and they're questioning at the banquet there. Do you think there's life anywhere but on Earth? So that's...
And there is a little note afterwards that he said that where there's a little bit of a dedication to Disney at Walt Disney at the end as well.
There is a dedication to Disney there. In this book, I would like to pay tribute to the great creations of the great creations of Walt Disney, who, famous and amazing druid that he was, allowed some of his colleagues, myself included, to fall into the cauldron of a potion of which he alone knew the magical secret.
Yeah.
I appreciate that it meant well. I have...
There's
a lot of things wrong with this book. There's a lot of things. My problem with this book is it wasn't one of those books that was utterly terrible on the... I mean, it was pretty damn bad. It was down there in the bottom few for the race and everything else. But I just think this is a Durzo having a dig. And the plot doesn't back it up. The plot's nonsensical. It's just a weak book overall.
I think, like I said, there was a widely held opinion, even though this book was a good big seller, that this was a little bit of a jump to shark moment for Asterix.
Yeah, I think
having read it, I can kind of see. I think they may have a point to that assessment, because this wasn't. There was some good little bits. There were some good little digs at the War and Terror on there. There were some pretty awful takes on Japanese manga.
Just pretty awful anti-Japanese.
That was pretty damn awful
commentary in general.
But yeah, the whole thing to me, it was like you almost kind of feel we're going to go to space aliens because he was running out of ideas.
Yeah,
which I think yeah, I think. I mean, we are getting to the end of Uderzo's time writing Asterix here. This is
his last one.
This was his last book, I believe. Yeah. I mean, I think there is one afterwards. The next one, the Asterix and Obelix's birthday golden book, which is I think was like a story he'd published previous, or it's like a story that so there is one. There's one more that he's a trap.
He's clearly gone too far. I think these books took a general downward spiral after the loss of Goscinny.
Yeah.
And it became quite clear that a lot of the problems with these books were problems that Uderzo introduced to them, because they continued after the death of Goscinny.
Yeah.
That's not to say Uderzo doesn't have skill. That's not to say Uderzo is entirely, that you shouldn't look at these and these should be cancelled or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. No. What I'm saying is it's very important, I think, to read the Uderzo texts and the Uderzo books that came out more critically than the previous ones. Because it does almost feel like for a long time Goscinny may have been holding Uderzo back from stepping over lines. And without Goscinny, Uderzo kind of ran straight over them and didn't bother to check.
I mean, there was some bad ones with Goscinny. I mean, there was some very bad ones. The Great Crossing was a very bad one.
Was that one was Goscinny part of that one?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, I mean that one was bad. But
the Great Divide was the first sole Uderzo. I mean,
my concern is that once Goscinny was out of the picture, the bad ones began to pile up in number. They became much more.
I mean, I will say there have been some good ones that we've done post.
Yeah, I'm not saying they haven't, but
The Great Divide was a good book. One we did last week was a good collection of stories. I know that was Goscinny as well in some of those stories, but the Magic Carpet was quite a funny one. But I did tend to agree that the golden era of Asterix was Goscinny and Uderzo, and there was something just was missing a little bit. It was something missing. That there were some good ones, but they weren't. And there's, I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to say this is the worst of them. But yeah, it's down there just on the fact that there's not much to this. The plot is it's nonsensical, and I do feel like he's jumped the shark a bit with this. I do get that feel.
I'm not sure I'd say jump the shark. I would say I'm glad his era is coming to an end. Because I think we're getting to a point where previously we had, yes, they were bad, but there was the occasion, the artwork was good, or the plot was good. There was something to redeem it. We're getting to the point now where there's been one or two, including this one, where the plot has been mediocre at best and the politics have been incredibly problematic, and there's not much to redeem it. And it's when it can redeem itself on the basis of one thing or another that there's a problem.
Yeah. This was the last sort of full one and there's a few things I noticed that I think we also noticed like the art wasn't as good. Now, whether he was deliberately trying to go for something a little different, or whether at this point he's just phoning it in, I don't know. But the art wasn't as good in this, and I mean, and the funny thing is that at the time he was adamant that this would not be his final Asterix album, and but he said no, this is not lost. Certain journalists, but indeed this would end up being his final album as such. Now the one I think we've got the next one in the series, Asterix and Obelix's Birthday.
It's another collection again.
It looks like another collection of stories, from what I can see of it, and I haven't read it, so
I haven't either. So we'll see how that goes. It was released for the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
So hopefully that means that they will have reined in the more problematic elements.
We hope.
Especially given that it was released in 2009. And again, by 2009, you've got Obama in the White House. You've got, politics is settling down a little bit. Sort of 2007 to 2010 are kind of, those were the hopeful years. So fingers crossed he's taken something from his context there as well. I don't have a lot of positive to say about this book. I really don't.
I don't. There's not. It's a shame because I think, especially as this would be his last one, you'd like to sort of. There's all the problems we could say with there. So you'd like to have seen him go out on a high with the series.
Yeah, I think my main
and he really didn't.
He was really trying to do too much.
Yeah, and I do think
too many different things at once, and it got
I got to admit, I do have a very similar sentiment to what Robert said in the chat earlier about. I like sci-fi. I don't know if I really wanted to see it in these books. Personally,
it could have been done very well.
I think it could have been done better than it could have been than it was.
I mean, for me, if I was going to do sci-fi
Ring
in a
Ring
like
actually Ring went a bit further than me, so he Evil Knievel the shark with this. So
I would
Ring
say,
impressed.
yeah, no. If I was going to sci-fi Asterix and Obelix, what I would have had is aliens landing in Egypt, offering Cleopatra a hand, Asterix and Obelix appearing because she's sent for them for whatever reason, and when the aliens offer her a hand, her saying, "What do you think? We're fools? Do you think we don't know how to build our own pyramids?" I would have liked a lot around that. Or maybe the aliens asking the Egyptians for help with building for something, or something that was less loaded than some of the commentary from this book. It's very possible to do aliens within Asterix and Obelix, but not like this.
I think that you especially ancient civilization, you could do a blimmin' caricature of that. What's his name? Sukalos or whatever. Guy from Ancient Aliens. You know, you could have some good. You could do some stuff with because you know, I mean, they could have some real fun with ancient alien stuff with one of these books. I think they could really do that.
I mean, for me, if we're talking about the point where Uderzo jumped the shark, I don't think it was this book. I think he jumped the shark a while ago.
I think if I don't necessarily say about the. I think this is more with the kind of like the
the out there. Yeah.
I mean, to me, the one where I think there was no real coming back from was Asterix and the Secret Weapon. There was no coming back after that.
Because all goodwill was just lost.
Yeah, that there was absolutely, you know, there was you know that you know because that was the one, of course, you know, just the really bad take on women's lib, and that we ranted about for the best part of 2 hours, and that to me was there was not much coming back from that, really.
Yeah, I think that for me was a bit of a jump the shark moment.
Yeah.
Not insofar as doing something far-fetched and out there, although female bard for Asterix is pretty far-fetched. It was the moment where we saw the quality of these books kind of dove off the side of a cliff. And the positives you can take from these books reduced massively.
Yes.
And hasn't recovered.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
and I think
it was a pity because I think there was some element. There were, well, what I'd say, this was definitely a better book than The Secret Weapon, because as bad as some of the stuff in this was, I actually don't think the War on Terror commentary was too bad.
The War on Terror commentary itself and the commentary on America, I would say, wasn't bad. The commentary on Japan and the technological arms race, and the commentary on that side of the commentary was horrendous. Now, again, you'll find when I run the streams, I choose to show these things and talk about them specifically. And I do that because sometimes you've just got to.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I know we get a lot of Americans in our audience and we get a lot of Europeans in our audience. That's largely what we get, Americans and Europeans and the occasional Aussie. Racism isn't just anti-blackness.
No.
Racism goes in a lot of different directions. And there's a lot of racism against people from the Middle East and the Far East in the West, and that shows in these books. And it's important to address that as much as we address the issues with the pirates.
Mm.
and the Numidians. And I show it because it's not my place to decide not to show it, because that's not my culture. And I think it's important because I missed it the first time I read it. I looked at it and I was like, okay. But when I know I'm missing it, it's important we point it out and we point out the specifics of what's wrong with it,
Yeah.
which is why I chose to show it. But I think we're about ready to wrap up.
I think so, because we're also getting near to we are
Yeah.
getting near time for Ring's stream.
We are for
We
Tommy.
will be heading over there shortly.
Yeah, we're heading over there in about 5 minutes or so. I'm hoping Ring's going to give me 5 minutes to grab a drink and, I stretch my legs. So we'll be heading on over there soon. Anything you want to plug before we head on over?
Yeah. So I suppose next week on this one, we'll probably do the Asterix and Obelix birthday thing. Although I'm wondering whether we do that or whether we do another one of the, like we did earlier, like with the sort of hang out with skits where we get some other people in and talk what we've gone through thus far, like we did when we got to the end of the Goscinny era. I don't know.
I think it might be worth if we do the birthday next week and then I'll do the hangout on mine the week after.
Okay, cool.
Then that marks the end of a Durzo completely, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And then we can move into the
modern
and then
era.
we can move the modern the post Uderzo era, which which goes from like 2000, from 2006 onwards, 2010 on. Yeah, well, the last one, the last week's one was published in 2009. So,
yeah.
So, yeah. So we'll be now. As for what else have I got coming up this week? Next on Thursday, 3:30 p.m. UK time. So that'd be 8:30 a. 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I am doing. I'll be having another one of my Twitter streams. Now I've decided we're not gonna. We've done a lot of so we say these religious right wing nutters. I've decided I'm going to take a leaf out of Kent Hovind's book and whack an atheist this week. So if anybody out there would like to join me for that, we're going to be looking at David Silverman's Twitter.
You're going to whack an atheist? Do they pop up out of little holes and you have a hammer?
Yeah, it's something Kent Hovind does. It's called the whack an atheist. We're going to actually going to take a leaf out of Kent Hovind's book. We're going to whack an atheist, and it's going to be David Silverman. So anyway, I know Ring should be joining me for that, but I will say anybody who does want to join us to that panel, let me know, so I can, because I think this could be an interesting one.
Yeah. Two things I want to plug. I'm going to be doing my Death Stranding tomorrow, all being well, as usual. Thank you for those who joined me last week. You're welcome to join me this week as well. Should be tomorrow evening UK time, and we'll pick up the story of the game there. Come and watch me fumble and get lost. I lost my motorbike last week, so I promise I'm a better rider in real life than I am in that game. And another thing I want to plug, I know we had Jen in the chat earlier. I'm not sure if she's still there. I don't know if she's still doing her fundraising for her move. But if she is, please drop a link to it in the chat, Jen. We will plug it for you because you are an important part of this community and we do want to support you. And I did want to point that out if that was something that was still going. Because, so that was the thing I wanted to plug mainly. So we'll give a second to see if anything else pops up in the chat that we want to address before we log off. Let's see.
haven't seen anything for a bit. Give it a few more seconds, but
yeah, we'll give it a few more seconds.
but then we'll be signing off.
Everyone in the chat, if you want to help Jen out, you'll know where to find that information. And we will sign off now. So, Scummer, tagline?
I don't really do taglines, so I'll just say thanks for joining us. See you later. Salute.
And as always from me, take care, be good, and if you can't be good, use your noodle.